coach I was working with said, anger actually at its root level is your body telling you that you deserve protection too,
Mhm.
or your loved ones deserve protection too. It's not, and so in that form, it's healthy. Now, to get to that place, we have to integrate it. We have to
Yeah.
become one with it. We have to relate to it in a way that it's not out of control. Because if it's exiled or if it's suppressed or whatever, it's still got life force and it will come through and manifest itself in some way, kicking the dog, lashing out at our wife, lashing out at kids. Like you're slight, I mean, anger has so many expressions of depression, sadness, irritability, rage, like the whole spectrum, right? And so if we don't have a relationship with it, it will come out in places where we do not want it to come out.
Hey, Dave here from the Breakfast with Manny podcast, which comes from when my co host Emmanuel, also known as Manny, and I used to meet regularly for breakfast. When we were discussing the shifting landscape of manhood, mostly by sharing our experiences and our struggles, as well as my coaching courses and my entrepreneurial experience, we realized many men could benefit from discussing these topics. So, Breakfast with Manny is going to explore the unseen patterns that sabotage men from realizing their potential, healing, and getting the life, sex, career, and health they want, leading to a healthy masculine life. All right. Hey, everyone. So welcome to Breakfast with Manny. I'm super happy to be here today. So we have, of course, Manny's here. Hey, Manny. How you doing, bud?
I'm phenomenal. Great to be here. Dave, so I'm excited for this today.
Yeah, cool. And we're so happy to have Sam with us. So Sam is here, and I met Sam recently at a program, and just we had a great chat about all things, some things masculinity, and especially around anger and masculinity. And we're gonna zero on that today. But Sam, super happy to have you. Thanks for joining us.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Really, really, really looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome, man. So maybe first, just to start, if you could maybe like, how would you introduce yourself? I know obviously you do your coaching work and all that stuff, but tell us who you are.
Yeah, it's funny this question. Every time I get asked, I'm like, do I go with like the Maharaj, like who am I? Like I am nobody, Ram
Right,
Dass kind of thing,
right.
or do I just, who I am is, it's I found myself feeling like a lot like a human tuning fork.
Okay.
Tuning people to a vibration of consciousness of, deep-rooted divine masculinity, balance, capacity, all those things. And the way that looks in the world is I do conscious relationship coaching. So I like to say I work with couples, but I do it through the men. So I work with a lot of men on how they relate to the feminine, the woman in front of them, and how they hold her. And a lot of times, what I've recognized, and from my own path and my own uh, trial by fire, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
is that how I relate to and hold the feminine being in front of me is oftentimes directly related to, or correlates to how I hold my life in general. Because, we know the feminine is the life force of the planet. Mother Earth, Father Time. Like it's the basic masculine feminine polarity dynamic. And so a lot of men struggle with women, struggle with holding women, struggle with relating to women, with communicating with women, with understanding women. And it's a bottomless pit. It's that rabbit hole that never ends. And along the way, we can get pretty good at it. And through my own experiences, education, work, I've figured out some things that I help men with, and that really what I love to do is I love to create happy relationships and teammates in the world.
Mhm.
To have someone on your team and to feel supported and loved and held and seen and witnessed and all the things is a really, really powerful experience.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll just make a quick comment. I want to share something with you as someone who hasn't been in a relation for a while, and I started, and I noticed the woman that I'm seeing, she wanted to say to me, I'm a little nervous about you seeing me when I'm really tired or when I'm really cranky. And I just sort of
Hmm.
said to her, "Look, not interested in dating, just the good parts of you, sort of thing." Right.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing because our relationship jumped to a completely another level
Yeah.
when she felt safe about that.
Hmm.
And, some of your teachings, those are the kinds of things that can help a lot of guys for sure.
Yeah, I think that little interaction right there speaks volumes because there is a core collective wound that masculine carry, and there's a core wound that feminine carry. And
Yeah.
your partner in that moment was saying, I feel like too much sometimes,
Yeah.
too tired, too emotional, too feminine, too expressed, too whatever, like too feeling like women have been told you're too much, quiet down, like you're too emotional, you're too flowy, whatever it is. for generations.
Yeah.
And so the collectives carry these two wounds. And so your partner, like you, bringing, so the masculine wound is I am not enough. Like I can't hold you. You're too emotional. I can't hold you. So quiet down. Coddle my shame. And so you bringing the energy of like, I got this. I got you no matter what, allows her too much wound to quiet down, and it allows her to be present and with you and expressed in the relationship, which honestly, if both people can feel fully expressed in the relationship, it does a lot
Yeah,
for the health of the relationship.
absolutely. Go ahead,
Out
Manny.
of, yeah, out of curiosity, do you find that the problems or challenges that men have are typically very common, or is it usually a case by case basis with your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's a yes and it's a both. Like if we really boil it down, there's some things that are pretty common. It is the I'm not enough. Like I'm not providing enough. I'm not protecting enough. I'm not good enough in bed. I'm not good looking enough. I don't have enough money. The list is fucking endless. And what the ways that manifests, or the ways then there's underneath that is like it's shame. So I'm not enough and I'm shameful about it. So I'm going to shut down more. And so yeah, when we boil it down, it can be a very common thing, and it can look any number of different ways in each relationship. Some men it's communication, some men it's conflict resolution, some men it's sexual performance, some men it's what I work with a lot of men on mostly is what I call staying power. How well can we stay in a moment with our woman, whether that's like a moment of conflict or deep conversation, hard conversation, or a moment of extreme pleasure and extreme intimacy. Men, we like to complete things. We like to finish things.
Yeah,
Women like to be in things.
yeah,
And so there's a little bit of not a battle, but there's a little bit of like, there's some room to work there. And so that staying power is what a lot of men and the women feel these energetics of like, oh, I felt you leave. And they're like, but babe, I'm right here. Like, no, no, no. You
no, you're
left.
not.
Like you're physically here. I get that. I see you, but I don't feel you. And so when we shut down our hearts because of distrust in our body, shame in our body, whatever it is, the woman then feels us as not present, and then that's when she begins to feel like too much, and the vicious cycle begins.
Nice. So, Sam, let's go backwards a little bit. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear a bit. I know we shared briefly a little bit about your history, and I think it's a pretty fascinating story. And for a man like you to come from where you came from and some of the challenges to get to where you got to,
Yeah.
maybe you could just share a little bit about your personal story, and
Yeah.
then we'll dive into some of that shame and anger and some of the other stuff we talked about.
Yeah. Thank you. Where to begin? It's always fun to pick the entry point here, whether it's childhood or
Yeah.
adulthood. There's so many different experiences. I'm going to start with my whole life changed November 21st, 2012. It was the end of my 20-year-ish run with alcohol and drugs, and it looked like arrested over 20 times, rehabs 7 times, hospital stays numerous times, broken relationships, fired from jobs, and unable to hold a job. That was the kind of the moment when I decided that this can't go on. Like it was in a moment of deep despair and pain and desperation and just agony. Something came over me and said, "This is not the end. This is the end of this, and something has to change no matter what." And so that's when I began to unpack a lot of my life. That's when I began to unravel a lot of things that were driving my decisions and my behaviors. And what I thought I knew was valid and true, and then there was things and this from Bridge. It's like what we know, we know, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know about what we don't know.
Yeah.
So this was the beginning of my unraveling of what do I not know about the things that I know. Okay, I knew I had a drinking problem. Great. Where'd that come from? Social anxiety. Sure, let's go there. Let's start there. And it started there. And that, and so I kind of healed that. And then, the anxiety and depression came up. And then, then relationship patterns come up. And then insecurities come up. And then shame came. Like that was the root of the whole of it, was shame. And so shame for me developed when what I know about shame is that it begins when, this is not man or woman, but it begins when we're a child and we feel either rejection or humiliation for trying to get a basic need met.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was breathing. I had severe asthma and severe food allergies as a kid. And I also used to choke on my food. I had esophageal spasms as a kid. So
Yeah.
swallowing, like if I was eating too fast, like the esophagus would close up and I would choke. And so all this was related to breath. And so me trying to get a basic need met, breathing, would oftentimes get met with ridicule, humiliation, bullying, a lot of fear. And so I developed this program of shame and like I am broken, I am different. I felt very different from all my peers. And so going forward, that created a lot of social anxiety in me. It created a lot of separation and a lot of like, feeling like the spotlight is on me and when you feel shame or feel different and the spotlight's on you, that's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I gravitated towards tennis
Ah,
when I was
okay.
very young, 6, 7, 8 years old. I started playing tennis, and just so happens I was very good at it. I was pretty athletic. I had good eye-hand coordination. I was fast, and so I pretty much removed myself from a lot of social settings and chose tennis tournaments. And I chose like fully dedicating my life to tennis all through college. Almost making it to the pro tour. That ended when my senior year in college, and that's when so essentially like it was my savior, and at the same time it was kind of a band-aid for a lot of things that I was experiencing as a kid. And so when that ended my senior year of college, it kind of left a gaping hole in my life of like what now? Like my identity, my priorities. Like that was my number one priority. Like I put it before parties, I put it before girls, I put it before everything.
Yeah.
And so then that priority is gone, and I'm like, what do I do now? And so that's when alcohol and drugs came in and kind of filled that void, that tennis court size void I had in my body was filled with what it ended up being that 20-year run of addiction.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I have a question for you, and I think I shared that with you. I know my life blew up in 2012 as well. Actually, it was kind of funny. Well, you fixed yours, mine blew up. But
Yeah.
I think I guess the question I have for you is, what would you say to the guys that are sitting at home or listening to this, saying, "No, I'm so fucked up. I'm so broken. There's no hope for me." I mean, I've shared some of my bad behavior on the show. I don't need to go into it again today, but you shared, drugs and arrests and all. Like,
Yeah.
what would you say to them to get them to sort of get out of the shadows, like to give it a shot, to share it in a safe space? What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, find a safe space.
Yeah, yeah,
When you like share in a safe space, like yeah, there's so much in there because it's such a touchy thing. Like if there's a guy in that place, you know, it's really hard to get through. Like I get women reaching out to me all the time, wives, mothers, sisters,
right.
like just saying, please help my husband,
Yeah,
help my brother. And I would say, obviously I would fucking love to.
right.
And is he making this call or are you making this call? Because if he gets in front of me, like we can beat our head against the wall for 3 months and probably end up
Right.
back where we started. But
Yep.
the thing is that there has to be these moments of willingness that appear, and they do appear. Like someone in that place has like whether it's if it's let's just use drugs and alcohol, if they or whatever it is, like
Sure.
there's being in it, and then there's quote unquote sober from it.
Yep.
And in those moments of sobriety, in those moments of clarity, there's a notion that something has to change, and that's when it becomes overwhelming. A lot of times, is like, holy crap, I got to change everything that I do. I gotta change everything. I gotta like stop drinking. How am I gonna live without this thing? And so in those moments of, in recovery, they call it God's grace. And it's that window, that momentary window of like, holy crap, like something's gotta change. The thing is that I think a lot of guys struggle with, and I've seen this and I struggle with it too, is that just as guys love completion, we love accomplishing, we wanna be 10 years ahead of where we are all the time. Like I don't the whole beginner phase is scary because it means I might look like a fool, I might get embarrassed, I might fail, I might fall on my face, I might not get what I want. And I struggled with that in my real estate career. Like I bumped my ass along the ground of real estate because for 10 years I was trying to be so far ahead of where I actually was. I never took the time to learn. And so the one thing that I did when I finally put down the drugs and alcohol was that I know that I need to learn all over again how to date, how to go watch football games, how to interact with women, how to have sex, how to talk to my family. Like the one thing I can say is after that moment of willingness, when the decision is there, it's okay to be a beginner. Like really allow yourself to be a beginner. You talk to like Bruce Lee and all these like martial art masters and like masters from generations and lineages all talk about the power of being a beginner.
Yeah.
And beginner mindset is the one thing that's going to get you further than anything else.
I'll share one thing and then Manny, I'll pass it to you. I do want to share one other thing. I've noticed, so when I've gone into men's groups and shared willingly like some of my struggles, whether it's, I had an affair on my wife or other bad behavior that I wasn't proud of, I noticed I thought I was going to be like rejected and ridiculed. And it was the exact opposite. Like
Yeah.
what I'll say to the gentlemen out there and women too that struggle with this, although women do tend to share a little bit more easily in general, but men tend to suffer in silence. But when, I had a guy who told me, what was he telling me? Something about, yeah, he was telling me about his experiences with drugs, alcohol, and he got into hookers, like high-end hooker stuff. And, I was with him one day and he told me, and I just said, hey man, like it is what it is. And he said, oh, geez, I thought you were going to like, run away or you weren't going to call me again or you weren't going to talk to me again. Brought me a little closer to him, to be honest. And I think we don't see that. It'll actually draw you closer to other
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we make up that it's the opposite, like you just said.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that, having experienced that, it's like, oh, yes. And there's no way to get that experience without the experience itself. Like you can tell someone how to tie their shoe and they're great, they
Right.
learn how to tie their
Yeah.
shoe.
Yeah.
Like telling someone about that experience of a men's group or even just like one-on-one with a man is until it's felt in the body, it's completely foreign and scary as shit.
Agreed.
In your experience, when working with guys, for example, who had something very intense as an addiction, for example, or big struggles, is typically like small changes in their daily life something that adds up and then creates the change that they're looking for? Or is typically like a cold turkey something like very big changes that are
Yeah.
necessary? I don't know if it's a case by case basis or.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a yes and again, it's it's I feel like that both exist at the same time. Like if it's drinking, it pretty much got to be cold turkey. If it's something like I want to get up earlier in the morning or I'm coming out of depression, it's a very gradual, incremental thing. Like I'm gonna commit to walking daily for 30 days. Maybe it's 5 minutes. If you look at like the book Atomic Habits, he talks about like if you want to start walking, put your shoes by the door for a week. Next week, you put your shoes on. It's like these little incremental habits. You got to look at how the nervous system is going to handle the thing, and that's why rehab can be a very effective way forward. Because just stopping the drinking and remaining in your life is really hard, like really, really fucking hard. Because you're going to get the same external feedback that's associated and causing the drinking, so to speak. Causing the choice to drink. And removing yourself from the environment is oftentimes a very, very effective measure when it comes to this. Now, that being said, you have to look at how, if it's something like that's not as extreme as like an alcoholism or an addiction, look at what your nervous system is able to handle. So let's just use waking up in the morning. Simple, right? If you're like, okay, I'm getting up at 8:30 every morning, and I'm like, this is really not suiting my life. It's kind of hurting a little bit. Although I do have the time, I feel better when I get up earlier. You can't necessarily go from 8 to 6 a.m. and be very effective about it. It's going to be really slog for a little bit. But if you go 8 to 7:30, 7:37, 7 to 6:30, you'll make your way back to 6. So there's when it comes to the bigger things like smoking, addiction, sex, like these things that are harmful, that if you're still relating to them or trying to work with them, it's a fail. It's what you're waiting to fail. Like if someone says like I have a drinking problem, like I'm going to cut back to once a week. Like okay, that might last for 2-3 weeks, but you're going to be twice a week, 3 times a week, and then you're going to be drinking all week again. So that is the cold turkey situation. Within that too, you get to break that down micro of the macro, is that there are things that you get to implement daily that are back to the nervous system. Like how much can your nervous system handle a breach from what you currently do? So if you're, and this is a lot of times when when you're working with trauma, unraveling trauma, you can't just like, it's not, you can't um, allow, like someone's like traumatized 15 years ago, bring them back to coaching or therapy or a room and like relive the trauma. It's too much for that system. It's going to end up re-traumatizing or getting them stuck in that trauma loop again. But if you can titrate them backward to the trauma moment, their nervous system builds up resilience around it, capacity around it, so that they can actually handle it and get the benefit of visiting that trauma again. And that's the same thing with habits. You got to pick something that you can actually handle without feeling like you're going to fail or overwhelm yourself in order to really secure the habit in place.
Cool.
That's really awesome to hear, and I can relate so much to that. Always wanting to be 10 years forward.
Yeah.
I hate the beginner phase, the baby steps at the beginning. It's like, why the fuck do I have to go there? But I mean, it's so essential, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, like it's ingrained in us as human beings. Like we didn't come out speaking like this when we were 5 years old. We didn't come out running down the street. You know, like we have, like, it is proven in our system that when we allow ourselves to be a beginner, we are actually way more successful than when we try to jump steps.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to talk about something we talk about with every guest, and I know you use the words already, quite similar, divine masculine. We
Mm.
call we're considering ourselves like on the search for healthy masculinity as opposed to toxic. To you, if I use that term, like what would healthy masculinity mean to you? Like what would that look like?
Yeah. A couple words that come in are initiated or integrated.
Okay. Yep.
Like a lot of times, again, I've stopped using toxic masculinity years ago. It just doesn't, it's not appropriate. It makes the problem worse.
Yeah.
But there is destructive masculinity. There is dangerous masculinity. And it's what it is it's unintegrated, uninitiated parts. And so if a man has a wounded little boy or wounded teenager in there, you know, that is going to be very dangerous to interact with, for the feminine especially. And so what men learn to do is like, oh, that part of us that has shame, we shut it out. Or that part of us that, like I did it with my addiction. Like
Yeah.
I just exiled my addict version of me and called it healed for 6 years. And then when I got on the plant medicine path, that addict version of me was like, yo, bro, still here.
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm loud as shit, like
Yeah.
you can't and so what it is that we get to look, the healthy masculine has looked at all parts of himself. And
Mm.
this means like versions of him and behaviors and emotions and feelings, anger, shame, rage. We've talked about rage. Like it is, how well can this man hold mostly his own pain? Like if the man cannot relate and hold his own pain, he's going to be a very dangerous man because his pain will come through and inform all his decision making, his behaviors, his interactions will be all pain based. And that looks like everything from Mr. Nice Guy to, asshole.
Yeah.
It can run the full spectrum. So how well can the healthy masculine has integrated and related to all parts of himself and has the capacity to hold it all and be present to his life is, I think, the best way to say that.
Love that. Manny, that's a clip, by the way, right there. Just mark that
That's
down.
just right there.
Mark that shit down right now.
That
That's a
was
clip.
that was
That's a
really
fucking
good.
clip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's dovetail into rage. So
Yeah.
one of the things, so I'm a recovered or recovering, I guess we're always recovering, nice guy. I know that pattern. I did interact with Robert Glover at a couple of points in my journey. Nice guys are famous for being quite angry underneath, actually, right? And
Yeah.
so I'll just sort of frame it this way, as we've seen in society a lot of guys, since Me Too have been like, hey, I'm not a predator, like I'm a good guy. And they've become somewhat disconnected from their like angry side or their rageful side or their powerful masculine side.
Yeah.
What's your take on all that?
On the nice guy?
On the anger side of things, like how a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
guys don't express their anger anymore. Yeah.
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 Anger has, like, this is another collective and individual levels. Anger is something that has caused a lot of pain
Yeah.
for men. The expression of anger, the unhealthy expression, like, and whether that's hurting ourselves, hurting other people. we men have this, tendency uh, to stuff it down because it has caused so much pain. So therefore, like I was angry. I had an angry period when I was a kid or a teenager or even a young adult. Like I was a belligerent drunk, whatever it is. There are moments when this primal expression has hurt other people or themselves. And so what's the best way to do that? I'm just not going to go there.
Right.
Just like I'm not an angry person. I'm not an angry man. I'm a nice guy. I'll do whatever I can to please you. Meanwhile, inside or in their car or in the private moments, it's just boiling rage inside. And it's all stuffed down. And so the thing is, it's a protective mechanism because there has been either whether it's stories, making up for like noticing other men that are so angry and dangerous, and like I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be my dad. I'm not going to be my brother. I'm not going to be that kid in high school that used to beat people up, the bully. We have all this evidence that anger is such a terrible expression, such a terrible thing. And yeah, used like that, expressed like that, absolutely, 100% true. And anger is very, very powerful, and it serves us in a way that like becoming angry it's what fuels a lot of behavior. Like if something makes us angry, the way it shifted for me was that I was that nice guy. Like, no, I'm not angry. Like I don't get angry. And a coach I was working with said, anger actually at its root level is your body telling you that you deserve protection too,
Mhm.
or your loved ones deserve protection too. It's not, and so in that form, it's healthy. Now, to get to that place, we have to integrate it. We have to become one with it. We have to relate to it in a way that it's not out of control. Because if it's exiled or if it's suppressed or whatever, it's still got life force and it will come through and manifest itself in some way, kicking the dog, lashing out at our wife, lashing out at kids. Like anger has so many expressions of depression, sadness, irritability, rage, like the whole spectrum, right? And so if we don't have a relationship with it, it will come out in places where we do not want it to come out.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that in my own life, obviously. Like we've all sort of seen that. And I think let me ask you, like when you were younger or before, I mean, did you ever get into was anger a part of your repertoire when you
No,
were
I was
or
I
no?
was uh, I was a very, very well-mannered, like good boy growing
You
up.
were the good boy. Okay.
Yeah, I was the good boy, but I will say that in tennis, when I was playing tennis, I had some moments of some pretty severe rage of like literally not being able to see straight. Like
Okay.
I was like blinded by rage. Later on in life, I had a lot of rage turned inward to the point where in 2009, so much inward rage and shame that I jumped off a balcony and tried to commit suicide, leaving a
Oh my
bar.
God.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
35. I jumped 35 feet high, landed on the pavement below, and it was a shame, rage-fueled suicide attempt. And
Wow.
so, that being said, like I was very good at locking it down, except in moments when it's not locked down, which is the what we were just talking about. It's that when you don't have the proper relationship to it, it will take over the show and look very, very ugly.
That, yeah, for sure.
Curious
Matt,
about
yeah.
the yeah, sorry,
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead, Manny. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just very curious about angry the angry side that comes from, let's say, the integrated person that understands itself and is, let's say, protective, maybe in the right ways. Would you describe this time as some sort of being able to stand your ground? Because when we talk about angry, the typical example I have is, for example, someone shouting, um someone insulting. What is a typical angry, but the angry that's healthy,
Yeah,
mean to you? What does that?
yeah. Great question. It's a reaction versus a response. So it's operating on a dial versus a switch. So a lot of times the unhealthy anger, the unintegrated, the uninitiated man he'll have on a switch. Either he's on or he's off. He's all or nothing. It's very reactionary. Like there's no time from event, information coming in to his reaction, his response, not response, his reaction. So that looks like lashing out. It looks like hurting. It looks like fighting. It looks like immediate, like a knee-jerk reaction. So whereas like the man that has the capacity and nervous system to just take a second, like a breath, half a breath, a noticing, and then saying, okay, so I am angry. I became angry. What's the response? Not a dangerous, destructive reaction. So the dangerous, destructive reaction is what makes women feel unsafe. Whether it's at the woman or not, if the woman sees that, it's unconscious. Women can sense that unconscious rage, that unconscious anger, where it feels like that dude has zero control over his own body and his own mind right now. Whereas like if they see uh, an external feedback come in and the man notices, comes online, primal comes online, but yet the man pauses for a second and then responds correctly, responds in a way that is safe and grounded and centered, but yet effective. That's the difference.
Yeah. Manny, what about you, man? Have you ever had anything like you ever been in a fight or anything like that? You seem like
I I cons
you're a sweet guy, but
I
you know,
consider myself pretty calm and the good boy, I would say,
yeah,
side of things. But I think there's a side of me maybe that hasn't explored. Sometimes moments in which I think I could have maybe explored that side more. And I think something that I think I need to do more research on that. I need to be more aware, I think, of my reactions. I'm very calm typically, and I like to always reflect and try to understand. But I also know there's moments in which, like, there are moments that if it hasn't happened to me, but like for example, if someone just out of nowhere insults you, my reaction would be try to understand why first, like what, where is this coming from, right? But if it's completely free and then someone is really trying to attack, then in that case, I think there's moments in which, if you got to stand up for yourself as well, and I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the work that I need to do on my
Yeah,
end.
yeah, that's beautiful awareness, beautiful recognition there, and it's like it's so how much of how capable do you feel of defending your honor or your woman's your family's honor? Like if you that's why a lot of men go to fight clubs. You know,
right,
they'll go into
right,
that controlled environment and learn to fight because that's tapping into that primal rage, that anger, and building that capacity where like someone insults you, great. Someone comes after you or your family, like that's a whole different ballgame, and how confident are you in your ability to defend that? And
yeah,
you could be 100% like I got that, no problem. Or you could like go into like learn how to box, learn how to kickbox, learn how to fight, learn how to wrestle, learn how to somehow defend. That is what that like um, reactionary stuff begins to settle, and the responsiveness stuff comes online.
yeah. It's funny, Sam. I grew up in a small Canadian town where we played hockey, right? And back
Yeah.
in when I played, it was fight filled. So
Mm.
like we when we came up, the older guys taught us how to fight, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
better, and they always said you better know how to defend yourself. And
Yep.
actually, it was kind of funny. We my mother's first game she ever came to, there was one of those bench clearing brawls where everybody fought. And it was interesting. There was one guy on our team who wouldn't leave the bench,
Mm.
wouldn't fight. And you can imagine he obviously got pretty ripped apart for it
Yeah.
because we were down one man. But back in those days, like that was one of the things that was at my fight club a little bit, right? And it was
Yeah.
nasty. But I mean, there was so much, and I'm sad to say there still is so much of the toxic side or the shadow side in some sports,
Yeah.
still. But this is the days when guys are hitting each other over the head with sticks and fighting in the parking lot and
Yeah.
talk about react versus respond. It was
Yeah.
crazy times. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how old you are, Manny, but like, Dave and I have a pretty similar age. We have this experience of two very, like, we are truly available to the world before what it is now, and
Yeah.
like, basically internet
Yeah.
it was a really different world where, like strictly because of information and accessibility, like things
Yeah.
like that were okay. Like no one, now it's like
No.
that happens somewhere in a parking lot and like it's all over the news and it's like it's
Yeah.
just it was such a different, like the rules were different. That's bottom line, and so we
Yeah.
are this is part of the reason we're so kind of badass is because we can speak two languages. We can relate to two experiences of like that, which is very wartime informed, and this new
Right.
generation, which is very not wartime informed, very like almost anti, right? And so
Mm,
having the ability to kind of cross-reference or speak two languages that way is super beneficial in communication.
I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah. I wanted to say a couple things. One, I wanted to just comment. David Hawkins wrote a book, Power versus Force, where he talks about levels of energy and emotions.
Yep.
And emotions become higher consciousness at the level of courage. And anger is two levels before that. There's anger, pride, and
Yeah.
then courage. And
Hmm.
I talk to some of my clients about using anger to actually propel them to courage.
Yeah.
Anger is energy. And I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention to the audience, like you can use anger in very healthy ways to sort of spur you on
Yeah.
and spur you to courage, which is
Yeah.
the beginnings of sort of higher consciousness, you know?
Yeah, I think it's I love that, and it's so
Yeah.
accurate because anger is that catalyst, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to set up camp there. Like
No.
if it catalyzes your pride, courage, and then the rest of them, yeah, great. Anger did its job. You can leave it there.
Yeah.
That
I
means
love that.
you have control over it and you have relationship with it.
I love that. Don't set up camp there. So
Yeah.
let's pivot to so Sam, how do you recommend men begin to have a healthy relationship with anger? How would you recommend to our audience, like, how can we have a healthy relationship with our anger?
Yeah. Awareness. I believe it begins with awareness. And one of the ways to cultivate that is to, I would say, visit all the, like, we know, like what
Yeah.
makes us angry, what makes us like volatile, and what makes us
Yeah.
like really, like that's makes, I feel edgy there. I feel stretchy there. And so I think it's really important to create awareness around those things so that like getting less caught off guard by it. So if you can say like, okay, I know that when I go, I don't know, let's just use like I go into Starbucks and that slow person in front of me is in there and I just get fucking pissed off every time. Like
Yeah.
that's definitely something to look at, but look at all the like that's a small one, but look at the bigger events. Like my wife comes home and she wants to tell me about her day and I can't handle it, or
Right.
like the kids don't take out the garbage and I just get rage filled. Where are these moments in life when this kicks on and you feel like slightly out of control? You feel slightly like I don't know, I don't feel very safe right now. Like I feel like maybe you did cause some harm, or maybe you feel like you are about to cause harm. Look at these areas of your life, how this shows up, and then start digging in there and be like, what is that about? And just and work it back, root cause. And then there's always an element too. People want to work through this stuff. People want to work through the anger. They want to work through whatever it is. They tend to overlook how it served you. How did being that way serve you? So we can look back at our childhood, our teenage years, whatever, and say, "Oh, we picked up this anger program. Great. You picked it up when you were 14, when your buddy cheated on you, your girlfriend, or whatever. It made
Yeah.
you like you
Yeah.
just came online as angry. Great. Dad, maybe it was dad, whatever. There's an element too. Okay, that's great. Like that's where it came from, but there's an element that from that moment forward, you chose that. Now you're 44 and you're still an angry man. For
Yeah.
30 years, you've been choosing anger. Like because there's an element of it that served you in a way, protection, power, like you felt weak, you felt rejected. Like you got to look at what's like how it served you and what's beyond that. Like this is when we get into like what do I not know? Like okay, I know I'm angry. What don't I know about my anger? And so uncovering all those things and just the entry points are the things you know about. Like okay, I know I get angry when. Great. Like let's create awareness around that. Like what about that makes me angry? Is it because oh in that moment I feel weak or I feel sad or is it grief? There's a great quote that I don't know. I think maybe Gabor Mate or maybe it was before that, but I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name, which was grief.
Yeah.
And so grief, sadness, like anger is a very, very powerful cover for a lot of unpowerful emotions.
Yeah.
Sam,
I
out
would
of
say that. Yeah. Sorry. Go
you
ahead,
did,
man.
yeah, you clearly did a lot of work on yourself. I mean, it shows a lot just the way you explain these concepts. Dave and I talk a lot about habits and just reactions and what's the word we use, Dave? A lot the things that patterns, a lot of patterns.
Patterns. Yeah.
Um, do you sometimes find yourself going back to some old patterns, and how do you deal with those?
Yeah,
If they
absolutely.
happen?
Yeah. These things never go away. Right now, I've learned now that I can catch it pretty quickly. There's excuse me. There's moments when I go a little unconscious or have the ego take over or the inner child wants to show up and play and it's about catching it and recognizing it and also knowing deep down like wow okay that's where my work gets to be and I've done the big things the big ones like I've worked through those and they'll show up in a much less charged much less intense. The duration won't be as long. The thing is like as long as I'm open to them showing up and willing to look at them when they do, that's the power. Because if you're saying like, no, like me with the addict, like I was like, yeah, I'm healed.
Yeah.
No, I was not.
Never. Not
I was
really.
just
Yeah.
separate. I just separated myself from that version, and that version came back with a head of steam and was like, here I am. And that's when I actually became healed, was when I was like, cool, like you're here, like you get to stay here, and we get to have a relationship, and we get to love on each other. And I still have those moments when like, it's scary or whatever it is. And my willingness to look at it is what really, really allows me to have that moment of response versus that reaction.
Yeah, I want to share for our audience, Sam, you and I know this, and we've done it together actually.
Yeah.
But the anger burn concept. So, I'll just share with the audience, and I'd love your comment on this. In better relating with my anger at the program we did together with Bridge and Extreme, which was awesome, incredible program. In this case, we had little bats, plastic bats that were pretty solid, and we were hitting things. But I did it the other day as part of, because I'm doing another program with that group, and I have a beanbag chair, and I really wasn't feeling great that day, and I had a lot of things that were really bothering me, and I just put on some like crazy music and like smoked this, uh, you know, and I had never done that before, like recently, right? And I don't think a lot of men understand the power of that, men and women, as we saw, any human. What's your comment on that, on like anger burn type activities and those kinds of
Yeah,
things?
sacred rage practices.
Yeah,
It's I do it. I do it. I mean, I don't do it a lot anymore, but there's times when 2 times a week, and
yeah,
not even because I'm angry. It's
yeah,
because I know it's a massive energy mover. So
yeah,
if I feel like, if I that we all know that feeling of when I just like overwhelmed or anxious or like on edge, like
yeah,
like everything, like it like traffic is pissing you off, like you can tell it's right there.
yeah,
And to find a safe place that, whether that's your bedroom, your car, whatever it is, and just let out some screaming, like, or just beat on your mattress, whatever it is. I know, like, I've posted on social media probably like 3 or 4 times this
yeah,
practice, like, just set up the phone and just rage out in the
yeah,
dark room with the music playing. And it's the highest engagement I ever get on any kind of post is like, thank you for the permission slip, thank you for showing us this safe place to do this, because it's so important to, one, have that tool to like disperse anger, burn anger, like you said.
yeah,
It's also a preemptive strike.
yeah,
Like I know that
yeah,
if I do that 2 times a month, like I'm clearing away space that it's taking the pressure off the cooker before it gets to the point of popping. And so, yeah, it's one of the healthiest expressions and practices that I have in my tool bag.
awesome. Yeah, I know. I want to mention too, like you said it earlier, this anger that we repress, it sort of seeps out everywhere. It just seeps out into the
Yeah.
world. And again, like I've always said to men, like I believe we have it, we really have a duty to leave the world better than when we came. And like let's not do that. Let's not let our poison sort of seep out.
Yeah.
Take a practice. The other practice I'll mention that I've done as well, which is pretty powerful, is a completion letter. So let's say you were abused by your father, or you had a terrible breakup. Write a letter you're never, ever, ever going to send,
Yeah.
and either burn it, crumple it up, tear it
Yeah.
to pieces, do whatever with it. And the other one I've done that was kind of interesting, I had a woman that I was working with in the healing space who took me into the woods with an axe, and I chopped down a tree, and with a lot of verbal expression, and I think a lot of guys don't get into that kind of thing. But I will say this to anyone who's listening, like, go just start with beating your mattress up, or a pillow, or a cushion, or if you have a beanbag chair, like hit that, and just see how you feel after. It's
Hmm.
so clearing. It's really something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for using the body to express
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's where you really tap into, like, you kind of like using the body, especially with an axe. You take your mind offline and you allow the
Absolutely.
body to fully express and drop into what that primal nature is. That's why, like, in bridge, like, or anytime you're doing these practices, it's very important to use that kind of like overhead chop
Yep.
motion. That's a really primal expression of, taking us back to like our animal brain,
Yeah.
activated in, essentially caveman days. But anytime like punching, wielding an axe, like I just did some tire slams this morning, which is mimicking the axe.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. It's like using that body to express that, rage or that primal, like it's hunter-gatherer, it's protector, it's provider energy. That is like when we chop down a tree, we're essentially like our brain thinks we're providing fire for our tribe.
Yeah.
It's really, really
Awesome.
powerful.
Well,
Dave,
I'm
I'm
just
sure
gonna say,
after chopping down the tree, you were tired of being angry because that
I,
looks like it's some physical work there for
That's
you.
oh
part of
yeah,
it
man.
too, is like you
Oh yeah.
basically just
Tired.
exhaust yourself.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Manny, I suggest for our social media that we get you to do an anger. I'll get you over to the beanbag chair, bud.
I might
We'll
need
vid
to be
we'll
honest.
video
Yeah,
you and we'll put
that
that
would be
up on
great.
our social media.
I'll be looking for that.
Cool, cool. Well, as we're getting close to time,
Yeah.
Manny, what have you got? You got a couple more questions? Where are you at?
Well, no, but I mean, I have a ton. We could stay another hour or 2 hours with Sam here because I think this is really, really interesting.
We're gonna have Sam back, I think. Yeah,
But
for
to be
sure.
respectful to Sam's
Yeah.
time, basically, I had just one last one, just pivoting a little bit, but and coming back to the nice guy. Have you seen clients make significant changes? So guys basically wanting to shift away from Mr. Nice Guy, and what is
Yeah.
the reaction that they get? What I'm thinking is the scenario of a husband of a guy who's been the same way for 20 years, and everyone has the same picture of this guy. And then suddenly, this guy comes back and he has boundaries. He is grounded. He has maybe more of a sense of purpose. What reactions do you see from these changes?
Relief.
Mm.
People around him get to be like, oh. When a man fully takes the lead from that place, that grounded, centered, not angry, like really, divine masculine, sacred masculine, healthy masculine place, especially the women, like, because the nice guy makes the woman feels like she has to do everything. He can't make a decision. He can't lead her in bed. He can't lead her on the dance floor. He refuses because he's always afraid he's going to get it wrong. He's afraid I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to let her down. She's going to leave me, whatever. So he's just like, nope, I'm just the nice guy. Whatever you want, babe. Where do you want to go to dinner? I don't care, whatever you want. Women hate that shit. They don't want that. They don't want that burden. Like that doesn't sit with their entire way of being at all. We are like, when that man steps out of the nice guy and into the leader, essentially it's not going from Mr. Nice Guy to asshole or drill sergeant. It's going from Mr. Nice Guy to leader, to masculine containment. Because the man sets the culture of the relationship, sets the container. That all he does is hold it. Again, this is Mother Nature, Father Time. What does Father Time do? Just times. What does Mother Nature do? Whatever the fuck she wants. And Father Time just like, babe, I got you. Like you do you. Hurricanes, storms, fall, winter, summer. Like I got you. Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna be here. Sun's gonna be setting. Moon's gonna be rising. Like the whole thing. And that's the analogy. That's the energy that the nice guy gets to step into, is that of like masculine leadership and containment. And with that, the women in his life, but even his friends, like if he's the leader in his friends group, whatever it is, when a man takes the lead, the people around him get to relax because they don't have to worry anymore, especially the women. Like women want nothing more than to not feel like they all feel like they have to do it all. A lot of women feel like I got to do it all. I got to make decisions. I got to do this. I got to do that. When the man takes the leadership and takes all that off of her plate, she gets to then relax and be in her feminine essence, which is like the freedom, the expression, the energy, the sensuality, the wild, the dark, the taboo, all this stuff that the feminine just are naturally inherently gifted with, get to be there when the man finally steps out of that people pleaser, Mr. Nice Guy, into leadership.
Love that.
Love it. That's awesome.
We've had so many stories here about women who are, when the guy's like, I don't know, what do you want to do? They're just like, oh fuck, really?
Yeah.
Dude, have an idea. So, and I've seen it, dating again, now that I'm dating someone, and sort of, I put it on the table that, look, I'd love to lead, not all the time, but I think the most important thing, and I think this is a point I'd like to make for women, when a man who's in integrity is leading, it's an invitation.
Yeah.
It's not a command.
Yeah.
It's not control. It's just an invitation, but the container's there.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's it.
Well, look, this was amazing, Sam. Thank you so much. Like, this was really, really great. Again, everybody out there, hope you enjoyed the episode, and please subscribe. We always love that. And Sam, is there anything you want to maybe mention that you're up to, where people can look you up, or how can people find you? I mean, some of the men may want to talk to you.
Yeah.
How do we get a hold of you?
Awesome, man. First of all, thank you both for creating the space. Thank you both for being here and holding us down. This has been a great experience, and really amazing conversation. So thank you so much for having me. Best place to find me is Instagram. It's at Sam Gibbs Morris. That's Gibbs, Sam Gibbs Morris. If you go there, you can find everything else.
Awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, hey, keep going. I got to say, Sam, like when I met you and now, and then we had a couple of calls, like you're such an inspirational guy to me
Thank you.
personally. And I'm sure Manny, now that he knows you a bit better, same deal. And just looking forward to continuing our relationship. But thanks so much, man.
Yeah, man. Same. Can't wait to connect again.
Awesome. All
Thank you,
right.
Sam.
Manny, thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much for coming in, Sam. That was
Of
very. I think
course.
there's a lot of guys who's going to benefit from this. So thank you very much for that.
All
Of
right.
course. Yeah.
Goodbye,
Thank you too.
everybody. All right. Thanks so much.